Good morning. I must say it's really nice to see you all here. Thank you for coming. Genuinely, amongst the nightmares about preparing for this talk was the one where none of you showed up, and it was pretty lonely, frankly. The talk was fabulous, so let's see how we go on. But it was pretty lonely. So I'm genuinely pleased to see you here. So I'm Frazer Bennett. I'm PA's Chief Innovation Officer. And as I'm going to go on and mention in a moment, I have the best job in the world. So I get to lead a team that invent, create, design, and bring to life new products and services for our clients. I think we've touched the lives over the last 45 years that we've been doing this gig. We've touched the lives of about 1 billion people. So we're really proud of that. So what does a product designer talk about at the keynote of a disruption summit? Well, I want to talk to you this morning about a new kind of leadership. I want to talk to you about a new kind of leadership for a new kind of organization. And I want to talk to you about how it is the innate characteristics of inspired, creative, and purposeful people that are the keys to unlocking this new kind of organization. And I'm going to share with you that, in my view, building this new kind of organization is an obligation, not an option. I don't know about you, but when I think back to the early days of my career, one thing was clear. I'm a planner, and I had the whole thing mapped out. I had my whole career mapped out, every last little detail. It was a fantastic career, by the way. Really, really it was. I had my whole career mapped out. I was 9. It'd be really interesting to understand from you, how many of you, I realize it's early, so I'm only going to ask for a show of hands. How many of you are doing the job that you planned to do at the age of 9? Show of hands. That's definitely the majority, thank you. Definitely the majority, and just as I thought. But I better own up, because despite having the best job in the world, this is not the job that I planned to have. No, I planned at the age of 9 to stand up here today and introduce myself as Frazer Bennett, PA's Chief Aeronautics Officer. I wanted to be an aircraft designer. An aircraft designer and a pilot. Now, and at the age of 9, of course, I was a man of rather limited resources, to be honest. Capital was rather difficult to come by. We didn't have Kickstarter. We didn't have Indiegogo. And intriguingly, the venture capital community is rather inaccessible to those of us under the age of 10. But we get there, and this is my plane. Every pilot needs a plane. And this is my chief engineer, Johan. He's my first employee, and he built my plane for me. I gave him some high-level guidance on the design, and then left him to get on with the details. And as you can see, it's a reasonably standard aircraft design. Few features to point out. I didn't choose aircraft-grade aluminium. I chose timber. But I would point out that the Wright brothers aeroplane was made of timber. It wasn't 2x4, granted, but it was timber. The other thing to notice is that this particular aircraft design is one of a single wing design. That was largely due to environmental constraints in the construction process. As you can see, we're building the plane along the side of Johann's house. So we're still getting there. We're still getting there on that one. But here's the thing, right? Because many of you will have stories to tell like this one. 9 years old, at the age and phase of life where I could do anything. I could dream big dreams. Nobody told me that I couldn't build an aeroplane. Nobody said I couldn't do this. And while there was much that I needed to learn in a practical sense, it was that optimistic belief, that ability to adapt to change, work in a team, turn on a dime. All of those skills were there, right? It was less about resources and more about resourcefulness. And then, as we enter the world of work, something changes. Something happens. That childhood curiosity is leached out of us, right? We begin to feel like we've sacrificed some of that curiosity for the pressures of the boardroom or the balance sheet. We begin to lose confidence. We fear change. And we try to defend our position. We become blind, perhaps, to the opportunities that stand in front of us. And why is this? Why does this happen? Well, this is because of the way organizations are structured and led. Too many organizations are organized around targets and tasks. They lead based on fear. They steer us towards conformity. And we lose our difference. We lose that intrinsic thing that makes us us. And so we compromise and we end up celebrating small successes, a good year at the success of a particular team. And we miss that bigger purpose, that higher purpose in what we do and why we do it. And I'm here to say I don't think it has to be that way. In fact, it can't go on being that way. We need a new way to lead, to build a new kind of organization. And building that organization is an obligation, not an option. So why now? Why is this important? Well, there are 4 forces impacting the lives of consumers, of patients, of citizens today. Now, you'll recognize the 4 forces. There's no magic in them. I'll go on and headline them in a moment. And either you push back against these forces, or you embrace them, and you use them, and you exploit them, and you take advantage of them. And you know, there are things that you as individuals, as leaders in your organizations, are going to need to do to get into the slipstream of this opportunity. And that's what this new way to lead is all about, taking advantage of these 4 forces. So the 4 forces. The first force, the impact and impetus for social change. You know, the last decade has seen more impetus and expectation around social change than at any other time in the last 50 years. Government instability, the questioning of capitalism as the strongest lever for growth, businesses' response to the climate crisis and their part in addressing it. Now, of course, society's expectations change all the time, don't they? But today, the boot is on the other foot. The power lies within the individual more than it does the institution. People can and do regularly vote with their feet or their fingertips. They're more fickle. And that is really destabilizing for leaders. And as we've heard lots of times, it's purpose that people are looking for. It's purpose in the products and services that they choose, as well as the employer that they commit to spend their time with. Purpose. That's what's driving business today, driving businesses as much as profit. Like Tom's Shoes, if you've seen that one, on their buy one, give one model, or Method Products. Method Products is a $200 million consumer cleaning products startup. $200 million built around the idea of sustainability in cleaning products. Second force is about trust. And as we open our lives to the digital economy, we're having to learn again what security and privacy actually mean. Our kids get it. Our kids, they have a completely different view on trust and on identity. And they have a completely different view on how identity is protected. It's terrifying, frankly. But people have lost trust. And in this hyper-connected world, the axis of trust, the mechanisms that people employ to make decisions about trust is really difficult. It's really difficult to understand. If you think about the old axis of trust, right? We trust banks because they're big and because they're old. We trust airlines with our lives because of their brand. And we trust doctors because of the institution that they have built, that they built around them. But the trust of large organizations has been eroded in this last decade. We now look at the world through a completely different pair of eyes when we make judgments about trust. We don't trust bankers or journalists or politicians anymore. I don't know, are there any politicians in the room? I do apologize if I'm... No. I was expecting loads of politicians today, to be honest, because they've got bugger all else to do this morning. But there we are. Maybe I'm wrong. But we're prepared to trust, but we're prepared to get into a car with a complete stranger in the middle of the night. That's trust, right? That's today's trust. Or as I did last night, trust my life to a gig economy kitchen. I'm still here. And we value the opinion of complete strangers today more than we do the experts. So there's this new axis of trust. And ironically, technology is actually making it harder for us to both trust and to make decisions about trust or understand decisions that are made about trust. Because while it gives us access to more information than ever before, and from which we can form an opinion, this same technology makes misinformation just as readily available. And it's really hard to decipher what's true and what isn't. You know, think about deep fake videos, right? We can make anybody say anything. Or the one I loved last night, thank you to Mark, was #unwanted Ivanka. So don't look at it now. #unwanted Ivanka, priceless. So it's making it much more difficult for organizations to earn and retain trust. You know, they say you gain trust one customer at a time, but you lose it wholesale in an instant. Third force, difference. So for 150 years, economics has been built around the assumption that conformity drives growth. We need pattern. We need order. We need repeatability. And Taylorism and Fordism are the anchor points for this. And then more recently, lean and just-in-time and Kaizen are driving this philosophy of repeatability. And underpinning them is this assumption that we can derive sustainable growth through finding repeatability in the process of manufacturing or product or service or patient treatment and so on. And robotics and AI are exactly the same, right? Robotics works by finding a mechanistic, repeatable model to achieve an outcome. And AI is no different. AI looks for pattern. That's all it does, right? It looks for pattern and draws conclusions based on the patterns found. It's fabulous at this. In fact, we're at a stage now where we don't even understand how those patterns are found. And yet, in the end, what AI is doing is looking for pattern. So in all of these things, we strive for a formula. We want a system. We want to systematize. And that's the rub, because when the challenges that we face demand brand new thinking, when we need to adapt to survive and to grow, it's not about repeatability. It's about non-repeatability. Difference is what powers innovation. Difference is that humble and vital ingredient for ingenuity. And of course, the fourth force, technology. This one isn't going to go away, right? Technology raises the table stakes. It raises the bar, the point of entry. And it's exhausting, isn't it? Because, just when you think you've got your head around technology, bam, all assumptions broken. New technology comes along and slaps you between the eyes. Technology feels like a threatening force because we feel like we can't keep up. It feels impossible to work out where to invest in technology or where not to invest. And our organizational structures, our traditional organizational design, make it harder to respond to new technology in a meaningful time frame before it's too late. Not least because, frankly, all too often, leadership have not got a clue about technology. They just can't get to know. They can't get to know enough. It's not possible to know enough. So traditional command and control structures are not going to work, particularly when it comes to technology. It's no longer a tool that just supports the business. It's the thing that drives growth. It's the thing that drives the disruption that we're talking about. So what I've described are the four forces that have left leaders mesmerized, unsure where to turn or how to react. Societal change, leaving us feeling like we don't understand the consumer, the patient, or the citizen anymore. The changing of axis of trust, which means we don't know how to inspire a trusting relationship with them. The need for difference means we don't know how to organize ourselves anymore. And the pace of change of technology just leaves us feeling like we're on a treadmill that gets faster every year. And rather like my aeroplane, we're going to feel like we're in a tailspin. But here's the thing, right? Because the opportunity, similarly, has never been greater. These forces are disruptive, but viewed in another way, they're also creating unprecedented opportunity. It's not only that each force creates opportunity, but when they compound, when they come together, that's what really opens up new avenues. And we've got companies that have benefited from these forces today. You'll see loads of them outside. It's a real treat. Go and see Change Please. Change Please are enabling the homeless community in London to become baristas. And they're harnessing that growing social awareness, celebrating difference, and building a new kind of empowered organization. We know people will walk half a mile down the street, past several coffee shops, to choose the coffee shop that has the values and purpose that they align to. And we also know that they're very fickle, of course. So 3 months later, they may be walking in the other direction for a different set of alignment. But this is the power that's driving this kind of opportunity. So go and check out Change Please a bit later. This is the compounding of forces that's unlocking opportunities. So the question is, how as leaders, how do we respond? How do we respond? And the answer is we have to unlock people's ingenuity. We have to unlock ingenuity. So I mentioned I have the best job in the world, so I get to work with fantastic organizations like WaterSource. So WaterSource are reinventing what it means to create potable water. They're turning the water industry upside down. And so rather than purifying water at the point of production, we're purifying water at the point of use and saving us that cost and risk of shipping potable water in 100-year-old pipes. Okay, so and Ingenuity is turning that industry upside down. We're working with Pullpack. You can see some of the Pullpack artifacts on the stand. Pullpack is using 50-year-old technology. 50-year-old technology. This is wood pulp used in the paper industry, and we're using it to create a completely new form of packaging. So this is the big challenger to single-use plastic. You can go and see Pullpack there. It's using old technology in ingenious new ways to make the world sustainable. We're working with the NHS. Who'd have thought, right? Turning upside down the notion of how a booking system for a hospital works. By completely rethinking how booking systems work, we can massively increase the number of consultant slots that are available and get hundreds more patients through outpatients in the same time frame. We've been doing that stuff with Hillingdon Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust, saving the trust millions of pounds along the way. And it's Ingenuity that's inspiring our work with the University of Cambridge, using AI, machine learning, analytics, vision systems, and drones to enable farmers to make better choices about how they manage their crops, which parts of their crops they need to feed or fertilize or apply herbicides to. And so that massively reducing their costs, but making this accessible not just to the largest of farmers, but basically to everybody. So Ingenuity driving that. Just 4 examples of the stuff we get to do. If you want more, you should go and check out our interns. So we had 25 interns in my lab this summer for 3 months. It's absolutely the highlight of the year. And some of the intern projects that we were running are also, they're doing some demos and stuff of what the next generation of Ingenuity looks like. And if you didn't already feel like your job was under threat, go and check out the interns and then see how you feel. So what's the magic trick? How do we do this? Well, you see, society has all the ingredients that it needs for long-term prosperity. We have brilliant people. We have technologies that empower. We have that innate sense of purpose. But the change that we need is not a tweak. This isn't a modest change to a traditional organization. We have to radically rethink how we lead. But the good news is that you can start small. Think big, but you can start small. You can start with yourself. However frustrated you might be with your own organization and its ability to affect change, everything can begin with you. So try these 4 things, okay? Well, at least try one of these 4 things today. This is what the new leader is doing. Thing 1. Everything has a silver lining. The first characteristic of the new leader is that they nurture human optimism. That's the positive in Positive Human Future that we talk about. To the optimist, the glass is always half full, except when it's full. And the new way to lead is to always be on the lookout for the optimist. Your organization has its fair share of optimists. Your job is to seek them out and look after them. Optimism isn't about being happy. It kind of helps. Optimism is about believing that we can find a solution. It's about approaching the problem with a growth mindset. Optimism releases serotonin, that powerful drug, that powerful neurotransmitter that makes connections in the brain that would not otherwise be made. And that is creativity. Optimism drives creativity biologically. You make connections that would otherwise have been seen not as relevant. And leaders that can't inspire optimism cannot inspire a growth mindset. Optimists see constraints as a catalyst for growth, not a blocker. And you might have seen or heard in the news recently, optimists live longer. So if there wasn't another reason to do it, optimists live longer. What's not to like, right? Second thing to do. The second ingredient is about dissonance. Empowering teams to innovate by exploiting difference. Mix things up. Go out of your way to mix things up. It's that dissonance. It's that healthy, creative tension that comes from difference. That's the essential ingredient to ingenuity. It's the springboard to innovation. But we're all birds of a feather, right? How many people are sitting next to somebody they don't know? Fewer than had plans for their career earlier. We're birds of a feather. We like to spend time with people that think like us. But difference is about difference of thought and difference of outlook. And yet, we like to employ people that are just like us, even worse. And the future leader's role is to create an organizational structure that demands dissonance, difference of thought, difference of opinion, people that see the world in a different way, that work in a different way, that think in a different way. You know, we're the first generation of leaders that have 5 generations in the workplace today. That's the first time in history that we've had 5 generations of people in the workplace, side by side. And making this work to our full advantage, that's the role of the new leader. Maintaining what we've called affectionately called that creative tension in an organization is easier said than done, but it is healthy. And it begins with you as leaders. So go out of your way to inspire dissonance. It takes a bit of grit to make a pearl. Third, you have to build your organization on sand. You can't rely on those age-old foundations anymore because they were the foundations for the old organization, not the new one. We need organizations that are adaptive, that are able to change quickly, to make decisions at warp speed. And to hardened old-timers, that feels like an organization that's built on sand. But we have to think of organizations as organisms, not mechanisms. They're not designed to just achieve a locked-in process. They're organisms. They intrinsically adapt. They are creative. And they don't have a hierarchy. That's not important because command and control is way too slow. We need decisions to be made by empowered people who are closest to the impact of that decision so that they can make them fast. And sometimes it's more important to be fast than it is to be right. The new organization and the new leader of the organization is focused on ideas. And we need a meritocracy for ideas so that it's not the boss that decides, it's the best that decide. Because leaders can't and don't know enough anymore to have a traditional command and control structure. That's why Bezos and his team at Amazon vowed to create the world's biggest laboratory. Or if you haven't heard of them, Haier is a Chinese consumer goods company They're one of the top 3 appliance manufacturers in the world. And Zhang Rumin, the CEO, organizes his business as 4,000 small enterprises. And because he wants to maximize the chances of success by eliminating that single point of failure. Finally, you have to believe in the power of not invented here. The new way to lead is to seek inspiration from the widest possible sources. Seek it from the surprising places. Take advantage of the hyper-connected world and exploit other people's technology rather than your own. We've taken technologies in healthcare, in a medical patch design, and used them in security. We spend a lot of our time taking ideas from one market or one sector and applying them in another. And if you hunt around, you'll find that the solution to the problem that you have has already been found by somebody else, and your job is to apply it. So there's a new way to lead. The 4 forces demand it, and when they combine, that perceived threat becomes an opportunity. The real treat is how we as leaders respond to that. That's when it gets fun. You know, when I think back to my time in the aeronautics industry, which it was a short career, but it was a meaningful career. It was that optimism. It was that playful optimism. It was adaptability and the belief that I can have an impact. I had all the skills back then. I was drastically limited in the experience department, but I had all the skills. So they gave me 25 minutes this morning to try and nudge your behavior. And if there's one challenge I'd like to leave with you, it's to begin to unlock that ingenuity. Spend today seeking out difference. Go and speak with people you wouldn't normally speak with. Think back to your childhood, or if you didn't have a childhood, think back to the childhood of people you know, and spend 20 minutes a day thinking like a 9-year-old, optimistic, enchanted by variety, not afraid of change. The new way to lead is the leadership of a purposeful, powerful, adaptive, gritty, organic institution. The future leader is not the master of a machine. I'd love to talk to you about how you're enabling that in your organizations, not least because I'm always looking out for good ideas. Thank you for listening.